Hello Xyy'nai Planet Earth, this is Xyy'nai. Today in this episode we're going to be going over the Xyy'nai physiological cues that you give off that let people read that you are a Xyy'nai, cues that you can look at yourself, cues that you can look at in the mirror, and you can look at video footage of yourself and see, wow, oh my gosh, that's me doing Xyy'nai. That's right, it's really awesome stuff. First, I'm just going to go over some theory basics to get that out of the way. One is that your powers, the powers of any human when they're doing what they do, they give off signals. So the way you gesture, the way you move your head, the way you move your mouth, your eyes, how far the expression comes up into your face, all those things, the natural aspects of them, the way they change aspect and tone, all have to do with what's going on here. So the powers do activity inwardly, but that shows up in the entire body, and there's an outward expression or manifestation of this. So those powers don't just give off signals, they give off signals based on the particular way that they're being used, and more importantly, actually how they're oriented in the psyche, so how they're ranked. So we talked about that earlier, about the powers in the previous filmings, how the Xy for Xyy'nai is unique because of all the mojos that are out there. Only the Xyy'nai mojo has Xy as its first ranked power, and combined or infused with the tandem power of Nai. So that makes the signals that a Xyy'nai gives out unique. So for you as a Xyy'nai, you have 4 conscious powers, but in a unique hierarchy. And as you use them, they'll give off signals that no other mojo would give off. Other mojos may have Xy, they may have Nai, or powers that you have, but they don't have them in the hierarchy that you do, or in compounds that you do. So they don't give momentum and modulation like they do for you. So that's something that we'll want to pay attention to here, and when we're talking about the physiological cues, are these energy levels that you give off and the general cues that come from the use of that power. Let's start with a concept that's both a cue and a concept, and that is momentum and modulation. We talked about that before. Momentum gives you energy, so as a Xyy'nai, your powers of Xy and Nai are your momentum powers, and V and Xy are your modulation powers. But momentum and modulation are also a cue, because as you use your powers, whether they be momentum or modulation, there will be a change, an observable change in your energy and your confidence and your comfortability. So because of that, those who are trained to mojo read will be able to read that on you. If you're using the momentum powers, so you will see an increase in energy, an increase in your confidence, an increase in your comfortability. So momentum is both a phenomena that's happening in your psyche, but it's also a cue that can be read, and the same thing with modulation. There are 2 other terms that relate to mojo reading, and particularly here, and they are natural state and altered state. So one thing you'll be hearing as we go through these cues is that often powers related to momentum, you may hear them referred to as natural state, because some cues are cues that any mojo can do. It's not a question of them being able to do it or not. There are cues in which that is the case, only a certain mojo or person with a certain power could use that, but other cues, they can be done by various mojos, but it will look different depending on the configuration. For Xyy'nai, the use of Xy and Nai is going to give you momentum, and thus will be natural state for you. And over here with the use of your powers of V and Xy, the use of those powers is going to modulate or reduce energy for you, and therefore cues or maneuvers that are based on their use will have an altered state to it. So momentum, goes with natural state, and modulation goes with altered state. Now let's get into the cues themselves. First, you have the power of Xy, and there are several cues that go along with that. One of them is that you have aware emotive expressioning, and that you'll be seeing that when you articulate, when you're speaking in structured sentences like I'm doing now, even though I have the power of Z as my articulation, not power of Xy. So look at, for example, Coach or Demas, when they're articulating, that's Xy. So also when you jut your head forward, also when you're doing active listening, so listening to someone and you're paying attention, you're not just drinking it in, you're actually letting them know that if you understand what they're saying or not. And when you do these, you're going to have a warm, caring quality with a butter baleful spectrum that engages and connects with the audience, and this will go up into your eyes. and that signals that you're using your Xi. And people who are trained to read can see that in you, and you'll be able to see that in yourself when you're able to read yourself. So your Xi is unique in that it is your source power, and it's combined with Nai. So not only you using Xi will show that, okay, I'm using Xi when you do it, but it will also show the particular form you have, which is Xyy'nai's Xi. For Xyy'nai, the Xi use is going to be major momentum, so you can think as both your Xi and your Nai over here are going to be momentum powers in natural state, but the Xi is going to be even more natural state, so you can think of this as being majorly in your element when you use the power of Xi. Next, as your second ranked power, you have the power of Nai because you're a Xyy'nai, so what you'll see there, you'll have the Nai cunning eyes. So you have the cunning eyes of a Nai mojo. All 4 mojos that have Nai as their main perception have cunning eyes, but you'll have the unique cunning eyes of a Xyy'nai because that's your tandem power and it's combined with your source power of Xi. And this continues with all the other cues that relate to Nai. So when you disengage your eyes from the environment to go to the left, up, straight, down, and also when you have your head tilted to the left, and also when you squint your eyes, that indicates the use of your power of Nai. So that all signals that you're using Nai, and that's going to, when you do that, you'll also have that cunning quality in the eyes. So for the Xyy'nai, the Nai is going to be minor momentum, which means that you're minorly in your element, but you are in your element when you're using these powers, majorly in your element when you're using the power of Xi, and minorly in your element when you're using your power of Nai. Next you have V, and that's going to be seen when you as a Xyy'nai, when you widen your eyes, when you perk up your eyebrows, or when you lift your overall carriage. And that's going to have, when you use the power of V, it's going to have an amped quality in the eyes and in the body. A way of moving like there are amped electric currents that give you a feral, visceral quality. And that's going to happen when you access your V to move your body, and this includes your entire body, your shoulders. You'll have this amped energy that will also go into your hips, the stance, the way you walk, will all have this ampage coming from the V. So this is going to be altered state for you though, because it's on your modulation. So like the unflappable mode, when you're using your Xy, both of these are going to be altered states for you. So your amped and your unflappable modes are altered states. So over here, your caring is a natural state mode for you, and being cunning is a natural state mode for you. And the last of the conscious powers is the power of Xy. Xy you can see in yourself when you disengage your eyes from the environment to the right, up, straight, or down. Also when you have your head tilted to the right, also when you do right shrugs. Those are all signals that you're using your power of Xy. So when you do these, you're going to have an unflappable quality. You're going to lose emotive expressioning. Your face is going to cool. And Xy is going to be modulation for you, and because it's modulation for you, it can be read by other people that, you know, that it is modulation. So Xy is going to be major modulation, so that's going to be the most out of your element will be when you're using your power of Xy. It's going to be the most altered state for you, major modulation, majorly out of your natural element, but this doesn't mean that you can't be very good at it. It just means that it's a bit further for you to travel and, you know, to set it up properly, you know, in the best way. It's good to do it in a specialized form that goes with your momentum powers and your peak pathway. Again, you can be trained in your abilities to use your powers in specific ways you can use them, and you can become very refined in using certain powers that are over here in your far side, like the V and the Xy. However, the distance that you travel to do so and the way that it's connected to other powers in your psyche never changes. And that's why you can always be read as a Xyy'nai mojo if you are one. It won't matter how developed you are or in what way you're using your powers, still the design that is actually doing the maneuver is going to be coming through. So it doesn't matter which maneuver your ship design is using, it will give away the design of that ship. those were some of the first gear cues, so now let's get into some of the second gear cues. And these get into energy fields. So as we mentioned, as a Xyy'nai, you're a directive mojo because your top powers are the powers of Xyy'nai and they're directive powers. And a way that this shows in you, it's in your gesturing. So for you, your natural state is going to be yang gesturing, which is going to be percussive, grabbing, going out into the common space, reaching out, things like that. Also fronts of the hands. That kind of gesturing is more natural for you as a Xyy'nai because gesturing tends to go in unison with the use of the directive powers. So when you're using your Xy and when you're using your Nai, there will be a tendency to be using yang gesturing at the same time. Likewise, when you use your powers of V and Xy, there's a tendency to use yin gesturing, which is gesturing that's closer to your body. It's more fluid. It doesn't have a power arc. There's less tension in the hands and fingers, relative tension, because for you, your primary, you will always have tension there. So it's more circular. The palms and fingers point inward. They don't like going into the common space and so on. So there's more to it, but these are the basic distinctions. And again, that for you, your natural state is going to be that yang gesturing. So when one's speculating on things with their Nai or articulating things with their Xy, there tends to be more of a use of the yang gesturing. Therefore, as a Xyy'nai, your natural state is going to be directive, so your natural gesturing is going to be the yang gesturing. And over here, the adaptive, that's altered state for you. Those are altered state powers, the V and the Xy. So for you, the yin gesturing is going to be altered state. And for you as a Xyy'nai, you have a unique form of gesturing, which is known as the shepherd hand gesturing or enveloping hand gesturing, which combines both your yang and yin gesturing all together, but it's unique to you as a Xyy'nai. Another cue that's manifest in someone is their boundary setting or approachability settings. And for directives, the boundary setting is going to be natural. For adaptives, the approachability is going to be natural. So for you as a Xyy'nai, for you, it's natural to boundary set. That's just your natural settings. And to the approachability, which will come along with using your modulation powers of V and Xy, that's going to be altered state for you. So natural state boundary setting and altered state approachability. Another cue that goes along with the energy fields is going to be the animation and refrainment. So the animation is going to be natural for objective mojos and altered for subjective mojos. And the refrainment is going to be natural for subjective mojos and altered for the objective mojos. So you, as Xyy'nai, you are an objective mojo. For you, it's going to be natural for you to animate. So animation for you is natural state, and refrainment is going to be altered. So refrainment for you is going to be altered state. And because you are an objective mojo, there's another cue that goes along with that, which is what we call unhooded eyes. Now, unhooded eyes doesn't really have to do with like the size or the shape of your eyes. It's more of a your eyes, the energy, whether your energy coming out of your eyes is like outward, or if it's like inward energy in your eyes. And for you as a Xyy'nai, you're an objective mojo, so you're going to have those unhooded eyes, and there's definitely a quality that you can, this is for maybe when you start out mojo reading, this is a harder cue for you to pick up on. But as you learn how to mojo read, this is definitely something that just pops out, is the hooded versus the unhooded eyes. And the unhooded eyes, which you have, are the ones that are that's pressed up against the glass, just like taking in dealing with the environment and taking in information from the environment. And the energy is right there and going outward. You don't have the hooded eyes, which subjectives have, like myself, which is more like inward energy, and you do come out, but the energy is coming, is directed more inward than that pressed up against the glass unhooded eyes that you as a Xyy'nai have. Because you are a discernment lead, you have what we call the unifield phase. And the unifield phase means that your discernment is going to be coming up into your face and into your eyes area. For the lead perceivers, like for example, Coach, who's an IG, so he has lead perception of Nai, he has what we call the bifield face, and that, you know, whatever his discernment is doing, in this case the Xi is doing, never goes up above that brim line and into the eyes. The Nai is always over his Xi. But for you, you have Xi as your first, and then the Nai, so your discernment, your emotive expressioning of your Xi is going to go above this brim line and take up and go into your eyes area. And this will give you the warm-hearted, cunning look, which is really cool. Another thing that you'll notice when it comes to the energy fields when you really start learning how to read is what pops out. And this will be very something that will be very important in your mojo reading. It actually helps out a lot is when you look at someone, what pops out first, whether it's the mouth or the eyes. So for you, being a Xyy'nai, you have Xi as your first power. It's a power of discernment, and that emanates or comes out from your mouth area. And so you'll see that for you, what pops out first is your mouth area. And then you go and notice the eyes with your Nai afterwards. But the mouth is what's going to have the most energy to it. Just like myself being a Xyy'nai, having as my first power the power of Xy, which is also discernment, there's going to be more energy for me coming from the mouth, the unaware mouth area, and then the dancing eyes. So for you, first the mouth area will have most energy, will pop out the most, and then the eyes. Because you have Nai as your top perception over your power of V, then that's an interpretive perception. That means that you're going to have this unsyncopated baseline rhythm. So this second conversation. So because you have the power of Nai as your top perception, the information that you're perceiving primarily, is information that's not going along with anything that's concretely seen. It's this second conversation. And so you're going to have this signal that emanates from you, which is this unsyncopated baseline rhythm. And because you have Nai as your top perception, you're an interpretive mojo. So cross-contextualizing, conceptualizing for you specifically is going to be natural state for you, is going to be the most energizing thing for you, and versus the certainty or concretizing of using either the V or Vi. In your case, it's going to be the concretizing with the V. Those are going to be altered states for you because, again, you are an interpretive mojo as opposed to a literal mojo. And because you have Xi as not only your source or first ranked power, but it's also your top discernment power. It's a values-based discernment power, so you are a values-based mojo. And that means that warming of your expressions is going to be natural state for you. It's going to be momentum and natural state. And the cooling, so when you use your power of Xy to cool your expression, to put the brakes on, that's going to be modulation for you, and it's going to be altered state. One other thing to note is that these powers that you use also not only get expressed in the face and in the body, but also in the voice. So you have the first, your top power is the power of Xi, and that's also your top discernment, and that's going to be heard when you speak. That butterbellful spectrum will also be appearing in your voice, or can be heard by others in your voice. Now let's get into third gear. And this is more tacit, more artistic in the way that it works. And this is the conflagration of qualities that Xyy'nai have. So it's a bit tacit because you're taking in a tremendous amount of information at the same time, but the more Xyy'nai you look at, the more you look at yourself, the more you'll see the Xyy'nai-ness, which is just a combination of all of your cues together. And usually when you're doing what you're doing as a Xyy'nai, you're doing, many cues at any given fraction of a second, and any given frame you'd be giving yourself away as a Xyy'nai with doing a multitude of cues, but that multitude is part of a pantheon that exists for the Xyy'nai. But that multitude is part of a pantheon that exists for Xyy'nai and Xyy'nai only, and over time you'll start to get used to seeing that pantheon in action. And so you just see a Xyy'nai, do some motion, and you don't go into okay, those are shepherding hands, that's aware mouth. You just think Xyy'nai. So that totality of cues just jumps out as being Xyy'nai. That's true only a Xyy'nai would put out that collection of maneuvers, and this unique conflagration of cues of a Xyy'nai would include all the first and second gear cues that we talked about, but now you're looking at the aspect it all has in a totality. And those will come primarily from your momentum powers, which are the powers of Xy and Nai. So the Xy will give you a distinct signal of caring, and since it's your main power, your source power, you have caring with you all the time. It's just a question of how much of it is infused with your second power of Nai's distinct signal of dissatisfaction, and then how much it's modulated over here with the V ampage and the Xi inflappability. A good way to start seeing these cues, besides looking at yourself once you've been read as a Xyy'nai, is to read lots and lots of Xyy'nai until you see that they may be different than you in some ways, different riffs, different kind of being a Xyy'nai. They're actually using the same cues that you do. So you just keep drinking in the mojos of your own kind, and you'll be learning about your own soul the way that your own soul was designed. A useful way to go about that can be also be when you get a bit of understanding about your mojo, is to compare and contrast it to similar mojos. So as a Xyy'nai, the Xy'vai and the Nai Xy are very similar and designed to yourself, so it can be very helpful to kind of really zone in or hone in on what your design is by comparing it with these other two similar mojos. So as you see cues similar to yours but not quite the same, you'll start really honing in on what it is to be you. So that will really help you know, okay, this is what I am, and that's a really beautiful moment. For more beautiful moments, you can take pictures of the mojos that you're studying, and first starting with yourself, and load them up into a collage book. So it's really just rewarding to your spirit to have a book full of pictures of your mojo, and you can see, wow, look at my mojo doing all these cool careers, doing all these cool different things, and you can see the vast range within yourself, and you can fall in love with yourself, really understanding all the capabilities and abilities that you have. So if you had a book that was full of pictures of say jungle cats or something like that, you would start to love them as you learned all this artistic appreciation about how cool this animal is. And you, likewise, are a magnificent, magical creature, and you're part of a species that has this in them. And the more you study about these cool Xyy'nai principled protectors, you're actually going to see that the tribe was built to have these shepherds, and without them, the tribe would be lost. So you're super important. And so when you're able to see that, when you're able to see Xyy'nai in general, and see that they're super, super important to the human species, then you can see, wow, myself as an individual Xyy'nai, I'm part of that epic importance. And you are. So know yourself, grow yourself, save the world.